Anybody who's played a Pokemon game knows about Eevee, the little dog with more evolutionary paths than any other Pokemon in the series. And each of these Eeveelutions gets reached with a stone or an event. Now, each evolution has one trait ranging from emotional to elemental. And while the idea of using a rock or emotion to change something's genetic structure is, at best, a little far-fetched, there actually is a degree of validity in the incorporation of these traits to these Pokemon. There's a lot of speculative information we could use, from things like the moves the Pokemon can learn, but that would be a bit expansive and not really sound, given that different types and species can learn the same moves. So we'll be using the Pokédex entries from the main series games, and from the two stadiums, because the entries from there are often very similar, if not the exact same, to the main series games. Espeon. It uses the fine hair that covers its body to sense air currents and predict its enemy's actions. By reading air currents, it can predict things such as weather or its foe's next move. The tip of its forked tail quivers when it's predicting its opponent's next move. Espeon is extremely loyal to any trainer it considers to be worthy. It is said that this Pokemon developed its precognitive powers to protect its trainer from harm. Its fur has the look and feel of velvet. The orb on its forehead glows when it uses Psycho Power. Its fur is so sensitive, it can sense minute shifts in the air and predict the weather, and its foe's thoughts. How can its fur sense enemy actions? Espeon's fur has an enhanced somatosensory response derived from the desire to protect its trainer. When undergoing stress, there's something a person or animal will go through called the fight-or-flight response. It just means that in a stressful situation, an animal will choose to approach or avoid the source of the stress. In doing so, the body releases hormones that cause changes in the body. Heart rate increasing, breathing becoming rapid, and muscle tightening. Now, there's no doubt that a battle would be a rather stressful situation, prompting that hormone response. With its gift of enhanced touch perception, it can sense which of the opponent's muscles are tightening through the vibrations in the air near those specific muscles. From there, it can theorize which movement the enemy will make. Or, it could just be the psychic powers caused by that shiny rock in its head. Flareon. When storing thermal energy in its body, its temperature could soar to over 1600 degrees. It has a flame chamber inside its body. It inhales, then blows out fire that is over 3000 degrees Fahrenheit. Its fiery breath reaches close to 3000 degrees. Its body temperature exceeds 1650 degrees when storing fire inside. It stores some of the air it inhales in its internal flame pouch, which heats it to over 3000 degrees. It fluffs out its fur collar to cool down its body temperature, which can reach 1650 degrees. Once it has stored up enough heat, this Pokemon's body temperature can reach up to 1700 degrees. Flareon's fluffy fur has a functional purpose. It releases heat into the air so that its body does not get excessively hot. This Pokemon's body temperature can rise to a maximum of 1650 degrees Fahrenheit. It has a flame bag inside its body. After inhaling deeply, it blows out flames of nearly 3100 degrees Fahrenheit. It has a flame sac in its body. Its body temperature tops 1650 degrees Fahrenheit before battle. Inhaled air is heated in the flame sac in its body to an intense fire over 3000 degrees Fahrenheit. Inhaled air is carried to its flame sac, heated and exhaled as fire that reaches over 3000 degrees Fahrenheit. How can it breathe fire and withstand the heat? Dog's fur is used for thermal regulation, keeps them warm on colder days. However, it will also help keep them cool on warm days to an extent. The thick fur can help the heat from the outside stay out. Of course, it also helps all of the heat inside stay in, and that's not good. But I'm not telling you how to groom your dog. I'm just saying that this could help be the foundation for Flareon's homeostasis. It's said that its fur helps keep Flareon's internal body temperature from going past its 1700 degrees Fahrenheit limit. However, since it says that Flareon fluffs out its fur for cooling off, it seems more accurate to consider the fur as an exhaust vent. Now, the Pokédex says that Flareon has a flame chamber in its body. After breathing in, the air is heated and can be blown out as fire. However, oxygen can't auto-ignite. There's no temperature that, once reached, will cause oxygen to burn. There needs to be a catalyst, meaning that while Flareon's body is an oven that heats the air, there needs to be a spark of some sort to cause it to leave the body as fire. It's safe to assume that that spark is caused by neuron activity, given the electrical nature. The air flows by the flame as it exits, and its heat allows it to carry the flame and get lit as it reaches the oxygen from the outside air. Flareon's body is essentially an organic flamethrower. Glaceon. As a protective technique, it can completely freeze its fur to make its hairs stand like needles. By controlling its body heat, it can freeze the atmosphere around it to make a diamond dust flurry. It causes small ice crystals to form by lowering the temperature of the surrounding atmosphere. It lowers its body heat to freeze its fur. The hairs then become like needles it can fire. How can it create ice crystals and sharpen its fur? Direct voluntary thermoregulation is an impossibility in mammals. However, so is changing your genetic structure. So, allowing that change to be possible, we can say that Glaceon is capable of self-inducing targeted temperature management, or TTM. Its previous names are a bit more explanatory: therapeutic hypothermia and protective hypothermia. It's the idea of lowering the body temperature to otherwise dangerous levels for medical uses. But with Glaceon, who's conditioned for cold, it's simply a defense mechanism. Diamond dust or ice crystals are formed when warm air containing water vapor goes to the surface and meets cold air, which has a temperature ranging from 32 degrees Fahrenheit to negative 38.2 degrees Fahrenheit. That low temperature can cause the water vapor to turn into ice, but since those droplets are small, they are crystalline and dust-like. Therefore, Glaceon probably lowers its body temperature to one of these extreme levels, or maybe even lower, to freeze the air around it. Glaceon's ability to make its fur straight for protection is actually very similar to mammalian behavior. Fur or hair will stand erect due to small muscles directly below the skin and attached to the hair follicles called arrector pili muscles. These muscles have an involuntary function called the pilomotor reflex. Basically, when cold or threatened, these muscles will contract, causing the follicles they're attached to stand straight up. Now, both of these reasons, chilliness and fear, are things to be protected from. But I think it's safe to say that Glaceon isn't having its hair stand up to keep warm. So it makes sense that when afraid, its hair stands up. So with the hair standing up and the air of it cold around it, it can freeze the hairs to behave as needles. But shooting them, pfft. Jolteon. It accumulates negative ions in the atmosphere to blast out 10,000 volt lightning bolts. A sensitive Pokemon that easily becomes sad or angry. Every time its mood changes, it charges power. Its weapons are its 10,000 volt electric attacks and its spiky fur. Its sharp hair can pierce enemies when it bristles. It concentrates the weak electric charges emitted by its cells and launches wicked lightning bolts. Every hair on its body starts to stand sharply on end if it becomes charged with electricity. The negatively charged ions generated in its fur create a constant sparking noise. Jolteon's cells generate a low level of electricity. This power is amplified by the static electricity of its fur, enabling the Pokemon to drop thunderbolts. The bristling fur is made of electrically charged needles. If it is angered or startled, the fur all over its body bristles like sharp needles that pierce foes. It controls 10,000 volt power and can raise all of the fur on its body as if it were sharp needles. If agitated, it uses electricity to straighten out its fur and launch it in small bunches. By storing electricity in its body, it can shoot its bristle-like fur like a barrage of missiles. How is it able to create a burst of electricity? A simple electrical transformer works by connecting an electrically charged wire holding the primary current to an iron core. Then you attach another wire for the secondary current to the opposite end of the core. By wrapping them around the core, the primary current gets transferred to the second wire. However, the greater or fewer loops, or turns, the second wire has around the core, the more or less electricity gets transferred to the secondary currents, respectively. Fur itself is made of two layers. The inner layer is called the ground layer, and that's primarily for keeping the animal warm. The outer layer is called guard hair. That's the longer stuff that you see. It protects the animal a bit and gets rid of things like rain and snow. It's Jolteon's guard hair that contains the static, meaning that it's the ground layer that acts as the transformer. The hair that can insulate or keep in the electric energy could also yield the ability to let out that energy, which gets amplified when it reaches the static in the guard layer, which in turn sends it out as a thunderbolt. I'll avoid the obvious electricity pun. Leafeon. Just like a plant, it uses photosynthesis. As a result, it is always enveloped in clean air. It basically does not fight. With cells similar to those of plants, it can perform photosynthesis. When you see Leafeon asleep in a patch of sunshine, you'll know it is using photosynthesis to produce clean air. With cells similar to those of plants, it performs photosynthesis inside its body and creates pure air. How could it use photosynthesis? There's no animal that directly and biologically cleans the air. However, there actually are animals that use photosynthesis for energy, making Leafeon an actual possibility. But again, no mammals. There's the sea slug Elysia chlorotica and the spotted salamander. They both eat algae and actually take the chloroplasts from the algae and use it in their own cells. There is also the oriental hornet, which doesn't use chloroplasts but a crystalline substance called xanthopterin. The xanthopterin takes in sunlight and converts it to electricity. The other animal known to use light is the tiny pea aphid, but it also doesn't use chloroplasts. It uses carotenoids. They use it for growth functions. However, the spotted salamander is the only vertebrate to use photosynthesis, making it technically the closest to Leafeon. Sylveon. It sends a soothing aura from its ribbon-like feelers to calm fights. It wraps its ribbon-like feelers around the arm of its beloved trainer and walks with him or her. How is it able to calm emotions? Sylveon is the newest addition to the Eeveelutions, and as such doesn't have as much info on all of its characteristics, but what is there can be explained. Oxytocin and dopamine are the happy drugs. When the pituitary gland releases oxytocin, it lowers your heart rate and cortisol levels, cortisol being an adrenaline booster released in stressful situations. Dopamine registers pleasure in your brain, both sexual and reward-based. The soothing aura released by Sylveon's feelers is just an air of one of these drugs. However, since only oxytocin can be used in gas form, oftentimes as a nasal spray, it seems like this is more likely. Plus, according to the Pokédex, it only calms fights, aka stressful situations, not necessarily makes people happy, so oxytocin is definitely the best bet. Umbreon. When agitated, this Pokemon protects itself by spraying poisonous sweat from its pores. When darkness falls, the rings on the body begin to glow, striking fear in the hearts of anyone nearby. On the night of a full moon, or when it gets excited, the ring patterns on its body glow yellow. Umbreon evolved from exposure to the moon's energy pulses. It lurks in darkness and waits for its foes to move. The rings on its body glow when it leaps to attack. The light of the moon changed Eevee's genetic structure. It lurks in darkness for prey. When exposed to the moon's aura, the rings on the body glow faintly and it gains a mysterious power. Combine the last two of Umbreon's. Are those glowing rings possible? What is its poison? Umbreon's rings glow in specific situations, when there's a full moon or when it gets excited. It can get excited during a battle or when it's about to surprise prey. There are no mammals that are capable of bioluminescence, only bugs, aquatic life, fungi, and bacteria. However, Umbreon's glow has similar patterns to that of the firefly with the on-off cycles. And the glow's use has similarities to that of the anglerfish and types of flashlight fish, in being used before or with the purpose of attacking prey. Umbreon's Pokédex entries seem to revolve around the same general idea of the glow, except for one. It may be an idea that Nintendo is getting rid of, judging by its lack of usage. Its first entry, only ever used again in remakes and Stadium 2, talks about how Umbreon can spray a poisonous sweat. There are a few real-world mammals that generate venom, but mostly only do so when puncturing skin with a bite or a scratch. Skunk spray is also a type of toxin, but generally only causes irritation in animals and humans, and isn't poisonous. There is an animal with glowing rings that is also poisonous, the blue-ringed octopus. But any relation between that and Umbreon would only be the possibly similar aesthetic aspect. If there was a comparison to a real-world animal, the poison would be most like that of the poison dart frog, which secretes its toxin when nervous or in danger. If Umbreon's poison is indeed like the poison dart frogs, it's a lipophilic alkaloid toxin. There are hundreds of specific types of these toxins, but chances are the type Umbreon would have wouldn't kill, it would just burn through things like fats and oils. Coincidentally, firefly larvae can be poisonous to predators if eaten. Vaporeon. Lives close to water. Its long tail is ridged with a fin which is often mistaken for a mermaid's. Its cell structure is similar to water molecules. It will melt away and become invisible in water. Found quietly resting by lake shores, its cell structure is similar to water, so it can invisibly melt into water. When Vaporeon's fins begin to vibrate, it is a sign that rain will come within a few hours. It prefers beautiful shores. With cells similar to water molecules, it could melt in water. As it uses the fins on the tip of its tail to swim, it blends with the water perfectly. Vaporeon underwent a spontaneous mutation and grew fins and gills that allow it to live underwater. This Pokemon has the ability to freely control water. Its body's cellular structure is similar to the molecule composition of water. It can melt invisibly in water. It has evolved to be suitable for an aquatic life. It can invisibly melt away into water. Its cell composition is similar to water molecules. As a result, it can melt away into water. How can it blend into water? How can it predict rain? Water is cohesive, meaning it sticks to itself. Vaporeon has a cell structure similar to water's, meaning it simply has the ability to break down the membrane outside of its skin, allowing its body to melt into the water once submerged. As for the rain, that actually has a number of possible explanations. The simplest being that dogs have a fantastic sense of smell, and as such, Vaporeon could smell the rain coming, triggering its fins to move. Another reason is a bit more complex. Rain is caused by warm air cooling down. See, warm air holds a lot more water than cool air, so when that condensates, more water gets sent into the sky. Vaporeon, being structurally similar to water, could probably feel the level of moisture in the air as it makes contact with its skin. Upon noticing the moisture change along with the temperature, it could probably easily make the deduction of incoming rain. The third possible explanation is that the drop in air pressure triggers the fins to vibrate. So, each evolution has real-world possibilities, assuming you can suspend your disbelief for a little bit. I know some of these might be a stretch, but it's science, doggone it! I should rewrite that. Thanks for watching me talk. And hey, I'm not the only guy on this channel. There are 2 others with me making their own videos, so go check out some of their stuff. Also, Qwerky has a new Let's Play channel named Let Us Play, so if you want to watch the 3 of us mess around with games, you can just go over there. Thanks for stopping by.